Hey guys, it's Robin, our Silent Crafts, and welcome to my craft room. You guys ready to start working on our embroidery project? Now that we have our supplies, or at least you know the type of supplies you're going to need, some of you might be picking up things as we go along, but this week I thought I'd show you how to take your pattern and get it all traced out on your fabric, and then get your fabric into your hoop. And that way, the next time we meet, we'll be all ready and we can start doing all of our little embroideries. Once again, we are using the floral heart embroidery pattern that fits into a 6-inch hoop. Now this is a 6-inch hoop. If you do it right in the hoop you plan on hanging it up on your wall from, you're going to have very little room to get your needle in all along the edges. I thought I would do a secondary one so that while we're doing it, I can do the stitches on here first and practice it. And then I'll go through after with you guys and I'll do it on this larger one. I'm going to be using an 8-inch hoop. That way I know I have plenty of room all around the edges to go ahead and just, I don't want to have to try to fight to get my needle up along here or to bump into the side of the hoop at all. So I'm using an 8-inch hoop, and then if I decide afterwards I want to hang it up in a 6-inch hoop, then I can switch it over. I don't mind taking it out of the hoop and re-hooping it. Sometimes the professionals that do this a lot and sell their product, they say it's a little bit harder to get it back in the right spot and get it all lined up and everything, but I'm probably not going to be hanging mine in the hoop, so this is the way I do it. And if you guys want to try a different way, hey, go for it. It's your stuff, right? We might try something different later on, but for now I'm going to be doing mine in an 8-inch hoop. But I do have the secondary one so that you'll be able to see exactly what it looks like and how close it is to the edges so that you can make your decision. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure whatever hoop I want over my design to make sure, because if you had a 4-inch hoop, you definitely wouldn't get all your 6-inch design in there. So I want to measure it to make sure I'm picking the size hoop I want. And then I want to make sure that with my fabric, I like to have a couple inches all the way around my hoop. So when I'm putting it in my hoop and I have to tighten it up, I want to have something that I can pull on, and I want to just have this little bit over here. This one, once again, I'm cutting it just a little bit close, so I'm only going to have a little bit of fabric to grab onto here. It can be done, but I just want to show you how it's a little bit easier if you have extra fabric versus just a small amount. Now, as you can see, you can easily see through the fabric that I chose to use. So I'm definitely going to want to put something behind it. Now, it was mentioned to me that when I talk about, I'm going to be using this right here. This is the P44F fusible interfacing. I tend to use the word interfacing and stabilizer, and I mix them both up. Now, I did a little bit of looking online. Now, there are some slight differences here and there. But they said when it comes down to the basics, interfacing is something you might leave in like a product. Like say you're making a dress shirt with the collar and you want the collar to stay a little bit stiff, you're going to use interfacing. So interfacing is something that you're going to put in your garment and you're going to leave it in there and you're not taking it out. If you were to use stabilizer, stabilizer is the same thing. It's going to go back on the fabric and it's going to stabilize it. So if you have like a t-shirt that's all stretchy and you want to embroider on it, it's going to hold the fabric stiff and it won't stretch all out. It stabilizes the fabric. The interfacing will also stabilize the fabric, but you're definitely not going to use interfacing when you're doing machine embroidery, but you can use stabilizer interfacing when you're making bags. It's just, sometimes it's better to look, if you just Google what's the difference between interfacing and stabilizer, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. So for my purposes, every time I say interfacing and stabilizer, I am using this fusible interfacing. It's really thin, as you can tell. You can see through it. As I mentioned in my earlier video, it's going to keep the threads from showing up behind it. It's going to put a little bit more oomph to your fabric. So since it's a little bit, it's not lightweight, but as you can see, it's thinner and stuff like that. I want to have good stability. I did not use it on the back of my red because you really can't see through it. Now when I hold it up to the light, of course you can see my hand. I could see through to trace my pattern, but I had to have a light source behind it because the red fabric's a little darker and it's a little bit sturdier feeling to me. It almost feels like a dress shirt versus like quilting cotton. So I'm not going to worry about putting anything behind it. I'm just going to stitch right through that. So my first step is going to be to put my interfacing on the back of my fabric. Now when I first started doing this, I was thinking, well, I'm only going to be using it in this small section, so why should I do it on my entire fabric when I only need this little bit? Because I don't want to waste it. Now that's a really good point. If you were to do it just around the heart, since this fabric is see-through, you're going to see, let me see if I untape this, undo this a little. You'll be able to see this interfacing. You'll see like the harsh line of it underneath the fabric. It's not really easy to see on camera, but if you were using a pure white fabric, this is more of a beigey creamy color, you would definitely be able to see this line, and you can also feel it. It's just a little bit of a slight raising to it. So what I want to do is I don't want to use it on my entire fabric because that would be a little bit of a waste. And since this is going to be, they say it's a 6-inch hoop size, I want to at least use 6 inches of interfacing. Now what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and just kind of guesstimate a nice size square, maybe 7 inches, 8 tops. What I do is I lay my pattern down. And I'm giving myself just a little bit, the edge of it is right here, so I'm giving myself just a little bit above the heart, and I'll take it down to here. And I figure if I have the whole width of this paper, the printer paper, then that's about a good size. It doesn't have to be exact, and it doesn't have to be super perfect. You can cut your fabric out a little larger or a little smaller. Use the same amount of interfacing as you do the size of your fabric. Totally up to you. Now you're going to follow the directions of whatever you're using, interfacing, stabilizer, whatever your product happens to be. The packagings will give you the directions. I like to make sure my fabric is nice and ironed. Some of the people I've watched on YouTube, they said, well, they don't like to iron. They're not quilters, they're embroiderers. And that's all they do. And they don't want to take the time to pull out the iron and use it. Now, most of us are quilters here on this channel, and we've already got the iron out half the time anyway, so I go ahead and use it. They say when you pull the fabric really taut on the hoop, that it makes all your little wrinkles and stuff pop out anyways. But when you purchase it, sometimes it actually has a fold in it instead of a wrinkle. If it may be a little wrinkly, then it may be different and you can go without. But it doesn't really hurt to iron it. My fabric doesn't necessarily have a right or a wrong side, but I'm putting it right side down. I can sort of tell by the edge up there. This is fusible. Can you see that it has kind of a little shimmer to it? When you rub your hand over this side, it's really smooth. And when you rub it over this side, you can feel all the little glue dots. Now you want to be careful that you don't glue it to the back of your iron. So you're going to put the glue side down. I like to sort of kind of center it. You know, we're not measuring it. We're just putting it in the center of our fabric. This is very thin and lightweight, so I like to just kind of give it a little bit of a touch to make sure there's no wrinkles. And then I flip it over and I press it well from this side. I'm putting a little bit of force down onto it. I'm pushing it out to the sides. I'm sure that's probably against it. You're probably supposed to just go like this. But I want to make sure that there's no wrinkles. Smooth everything out. And there it is. Now, an important tip here is if you're going to be using any type of a marker that comes off with an iron or that's permanently set into your fabric, if you put heat to it, Someone was mentioning to me that the water-soluble markers, those little ones that draw blue, that if you hit it with an iron, it makes it permanent. So you need to be really careful with that. Read all the precautions and the directions on whatever tool you're using. I want to make sure I put my interfacing down first, and then I'm going to draw my design. Now, one time before I used the Friction, I drew an entire scene with the 2 or 3 snowmen and a Christmas tree and everything. I had it all sketched out, and then I realized the fabric, you really needed to have some type of interfacing behind it. So I went ahead and I ironed my interfacing on, forgetting that I used the Friction. My entire design disappeared off my fabric. Now, thankfully, that the one complaint that people are having that is if your fabric gets cold, the ink can come back out. So I went ahead and I just put it in the freezer for a couple hours, and when I took it back out, my design was all back on there and everything was okay. So don't worry, if you do make a little bit of mistake like I did, it can be fixed. Otherwise, you just have to draw the pattern all over again. You'll get good practice that way. Now, to get our design from our pattern onto our project, you have a few options. As you can see, I can easily see through this no problem. So I can just set it down. Sometimes I like to tape the pattern to something, and then I tape the fabric onto it so nothing shifts on me, so I don't have to keep realigning it if anything moves. Or you can put this up against a sliding glass door or a window, tape both pieces up there, and the sunlight coming through, you'll be able to see through your fabric to trace it. If you're lucky enough to have one of those light tables or a light box, you can put it on top of there. Now those are really nice to have. And then you'll be able to see anything. You can even see it through a lot of the darker fabrics. When I was doing it on the red fabric, it is a little bit hard to see through, so I had to use a light source to be able to see that. Now I know a lot of you guys tend to be night owls and you're up late at night, so I'm going to show you another option. If you don't have the light table and it's too dark out to do anything with sunlight, I'm going to show you a little trick you can do. If you have a coffee table that is glass, you can put some type of a lamp, a light or something underneath and shine it up, and then you can put your stuff on top and trace it. If you have some form of a Rubbermaid container, this is a project container for scrapbooking that I picked up at Michael's. I like to use it to put quilt blocks in, so as I'm working on them, I can keep them in here separate. I keep my fabric and everything like that. It never gets mixed up, and I can just stack them on top of each other because they have a nice little snap closed lid, and then I just stack them all up. If you go to, well, you could probably find them at Walmart or anywhere, but I know Dollar Tree has those little round lights that you push on and you can push off. You can buy the batteries there and everything. So for like $2, you can get a couple of those and do that. You put that inside here. You put your little lamp thing in here, and then you close this when it's on. You close this up. You can once again tape your pattern and your fabric on here, and then the light will be coming up from the back, and then you can trace around it. Now what I like to do is, I can't show it to you because I'm filming with you with my phone. I like to put the little flashlight feature on with my phone. I put it in upside down so that the light's coming up and it shines through this wonderfully. The top can be a little bit flimsy to be pushing on, but if you turn it upside down, the back seems to be a little bit sturdier. What I like to do is I like to put my phone on the table. I open this up upside down and I lay it down like this. So when I put my pattern on it, and I don't always tape it, I can move my phone around, or I can move this like this. As long as my fabric and my pattern stays hooked together, it doesn't matter if it's taped to the actual table or the container. I just move it around like this, and that allows me to trace everything. We can see through this really well. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it right here on my table. I decided to use my blue Friction. You guys, there you go. Friction, however you want to say it. I have this nice little clicker pen. Writes blue pen, you know. And I'm just going to go ahead and trace these down. I recommend the first time you try it to go ahead and tape everything securely and just maybe work your way from top to bottom and so that your hand doesn't smear it. These pens don't seem to smear, I don't think. And if they do, it comes off with an iron, so you're okay. Let's get you in there nice and close. Now this part is a really easy part. You're just tracing what's already there. There are ways to do this and run it through your printer and stuff like that. That's not the way I do it, so if you need more information like that, you're just going to have to go ahead and look and Google it or check on YouTube. I've just always been a tracer. So it's really, there's not much to say here. I just tend to do short little marks instead of, sometimes you can just trace it like that. Oops, you probably can't see what I'm doing. So you could just do one smooth line and trace it, but I tend to wiggle more when I do that, so I like to just do short little ticks as I'm tracing it down. See, this one will be a good one to look at. I just kind of go slow, and then that keeps me, if my hand starts shaking or if the table shakes or anything like that, it keeps me right on the line. It's just one of those little things that I've learned that I need to do. Okay, and circle things. You want to just try to stick with it as much as you can circular. Now when we do our stitching, we're probably not going to be an exact circle, like as if you traced a dime or something like that. See? So you just go through and trace all the lines that you see. I even do all these little dots are for French knots. Now I like to go ahead and put the dots there. I trace everything. A lot of times they say with like these leaves, if you're going to be doing certain stitches where you're not actually following the leaves, you're just doing, where's our stitches? Okay, like these up here, they're all lazy daisy stitches, so that means you're going to come up here, make a loop, and then go down and you'll tack it. Now, so a lot of people don't trace that line because they can't always stay on the line. Because I know that I'll be able to get this out with the iron and a little bit of heat and steam, I just go ahead and I trace everything. I put my dots for my French knots. I trace these even though they're going to be lazy daisies. I go ahead and I put the whole little leaf there. These have these lines, and then they have circles at the end for French knots. You know by your pattern that you're going to put French knots on the end. I still put the dots there because a lot of times when I'm working on this, I might not be referring back to my pattern. So I want to have everything on there that I need. So that's one way to trace them. Now there's another separate way. A lot of times the regular people that are doing embroidery, they prefer to go ahead and cut this pattern out. I'm going to go ahead and just take this over to the iron and make this disappear so we can do this again. See how nicely that disappears? There's no ink left. So they like to cut this pattern out. And if you're going to do it this way in a smaller hoop, you might want to print a second copy because this has all the labels on how to do which stitch they used in what spot. And what they're going to do is they're going to put their fabric in first and then put this behind it. So let me show you that. And then at the same time, we will also learn how to put our fabric in our hoop. So where this says this side up, I'm going to go ahead and just set that down. This side up is this way. This is the main part, the nice side of my fabric. I have my interfacing down at the back here, so this is the front side of it. Take my hoop, make sure it's open all the way. Now because this has that ridge on it, I have to fit my hoop, it has to be larger to go over the ridge, and then we're going to go ahead and start tightening it up. And I've noticed for me that means I have to get just about to where it's almost flush right here at the end. I don't want it to fall off, though you could take it off. Just kind of lay it at the bottom here and just open it up and kind of gently force it over. Because now right now we're on that lip, and then when we push it under, do you see You see how this is where that lip is, and it's going to sit right on top, and it's going to hold the fabric between that lip, that little itty bitty ledge, and this our hoop here. So make sure it's all the way over, and I go ahead and tighten this up a little bit. Not too tight, because we still need to tighten up our fabric, just so that it doesn't fall apart when we're holding it. Now I take a little bit of the fabric on this side. I'm putting my fingers up against the hoop, and I'm just kind of pulling it a little with my thumb. And then I go to the opposite side. You see why you want to have a little extra fabric over here? I work my way, just gently pulling it around the hoop, so that I'm getting all these little bits of wrinkles out. Then I have to tighten it back up. And then I go back around again. So I'm pulling it nice and taut. When we're embroidering on this, it's going to make this nice satisfying sound. It's going to be actually literally tight as a drum. And it's going to make that thump sound when you're pulling it through. Go ahead, tighten it back up again. I'm almost as tight as I can be now. Now I'm giving a really good pull. Of course, if you're using a lighter weight fabric, you might want to be gentle. Now you can see why they're saying if they had any type of wrinkles that it would just pull right out. Make sure that's nice and tight. Let's see what it sounds like. See how it sounds like a drum? Okay, so here's the top. I've got it right side facing down so we can see the back of the hoop here. Here's my pattern. I'm going to put it right side down on top of the back so that it's going to be showing through that way. You can line it up with the top if you want. I just have basic Scotch tape. Just going to put a couple pieces on the back. You can use painter's tape if you're worried about the pattern or your fabric. And now if I take my fingers and just hold it onto the back, it pushes the design all the way up. Then you can just take your pen or your pencil and you can go ahead and trace your design. Now the way the big time in the embroidery videos that I watched, they said they do it this way because the fabric's already pulled nice and tight, and when they've done it in the past and they've drawn the design on just sitting on the table like we've already done, when they go ahead and they stretch their fabric really tight, it tends to stretch the design. But I think because we already have this interfacing back here, that we're not going to have to worry about our design getting stretched out. If you've already seen the one where I did with the unicorn in the center, I did it flat on the table, traced it all out, and then put it in the hoop, and I had no problems. So you can decide one way or the other which one you'd prefer to do. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'm going to get this all traced out, and then I'll show you what we do from there. I went ahead and I put my red one into this little hoop. Now, when you got to really pay attention with this, like I said, there's not a lot of fabric. Can you see the shadow from my hoop? And there's where my design is right there. If I start to pull this fabric too much, it's going to take my design and put it right up along the lip of this hoop, and I'm not going to be able to stitch through there. So that's one of the things I have to take into consideration. I have to remember when I'm pulling on it that I don't pull these designs over my hoop. That's why I like to have a larger hoop. But once again, I'm not to the point where I'm putting them in the 6-inch hoops and hanging them up, nor am I thinking about selling any that way. That's just something to think about. Because I'm going to have to come up, really, my needle's going to come and just glide right along the inside of that hoop to be able to do that stitch. And then if you cut it too tight, you don't have too much fabric to grab the pull tight. So it's just something to think about. You don't want to make it too hard for your first time, but still nice and tight like a drum. I went ahead and traced out all of this one on my cream. Now I have all this extra fabric. You could come along and you can trim off some of it along these, you know, the pointed corners, since we're in a circle, cut off the corner of your squares there. But I wouldn't be trimming it too close, because we may have to, like I said, as we're stitching, it could come loose and we have to, you know, pull it a little tighter. And if you're going to be doing it in the, when you go to put it in the frame, if you're going to leave it in your frame, that's when we're going to go ahead and trim it. We're going to leave about 1 inch or so, and then we're going to pull it in and we're going to glue it inside the hoop. But for now, we want to make sure we have enough fabric around the edges to grab onto. I've got plenty of space to work all around my design. There's extra fabric everywhere. And I think for me, this just works out so much easier. Now, these little hoops are great to hold on to. They're, if you have like arthritic hands or something, you're not holding on to anything too large. I find the 8-inch hoop is really easy. When I get into the larger one, like the 12-inch, that's when it gets a little bit harder to hold on to. A lot of times I have to put the hoop up against my belly and just kind of hold it with my hand and stitch like this. If you have a stand to hook it into, that works out great. But I'm not going to trim any of my fabric. I just kind of fold it up like this and make sure it's not being stitched through on the back, that I only have the back here and that none of my fabric gets folded over like this. I still have my pattern. You can always print out 2 of these if you want, so you can have the full sheet and then the one to trim if you're going to put your design on underneath while it's in the hoop. I tried it a little bit, and I honestly, I just like to have it flat, so that's what works for me. You guys are going to find your own rhythm the more you do these. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I don't have a set day that I'm going to be putting these videos up. I need to kind of try to fit them into my schedule a little bit. My dream day would be to put them up sometime Sunday morning, between whenever I get up and maybe noon. So anywhere between, let's say sometimes between 8 or noon. But I also have to have time to work on it and film the video ahead of time. So we'll see how it goes. Just once again, if you go ahead and subscribe and then ring that little bell, YouTube will let you know when I have a video up. You already know you're going to get one on Talk to Me Tuesday, Whip It Wednesday, a Sew With Me on Friday, and then this embroidery one, I'm just going to kind of fit it in where I can. You may not get a set day every week. I hope that works for everyone. As time goes on, we might be able to do it. I want to make sure everyone can see what we're doing, and I don't want to rush through each of the stitches. But I also want you guys to remember that I've just started doing these recently. This is my 4th one that I've done, and 2 of them were identical. So I'm just kind of learning the stitches with you as you go. Sometimes I tend to make up my own stitches and designs. I blend a couple together, or I might change a stitch so it's easier for me to do. And I'll show you the official way that they say to do it, and then I'll show you the way I do it, and then you guys can make up your mind how you want to do it and how it feels good for you. So I want to thank everyone for joining me on this little series, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!